Lean's devastation. For young people, the consequences have been especially dire.
I was starting to come to a point where I'd have to accept that I might not get to see another day.
How high schools are working to support young survivors. That story and so much more on Morning Edition. It's a Friday morning, 33 and mostly cloudy. If you're going out there this morning, wrap up because it's cold. And then with the wind, a gusty day ahead, it feels like it's in the teens, and it will feel that way at some point during the day as well, with a high of 40 degrees. Tonight in the 20s in the areas, in the teens in the outlying areas. Then tomorrow partly sunny, 35, still gusty, and feeling once again like the mid-teens. We have snow in this forecast coming up early next week. It's WNYC at 6:51.
WNYC is supported by the New York Phil, performing Richard Strauss's Als so sprach Zarathustra, plus mezzo-soprano Isabel Leonard sings Berlioz's Song Cycle of Love and Longing. Kevin John Idusay conducts January 2nd through the 4th and 7th. Tickets at nyphil.org.
On the next Brian Lehrer Show, our first segment on the 2025 New Jersey governor's race, with Governor Murphy term limited out. The Republican field is led by Jack Ciattarelli, who almost beat Murphy 4 years ago. The Democratic field includes 2 members of Congress, 2 big city mayors, a former state Senate president, and the head of the statewide teachers union. The New Jersey governor's race and more on the Brian Lehrer Show, weekdays at 10 a.m. on WNYC.
Could Apple's Siri send you $20?
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by The Economist, devoted to providing independent journalism that makes sense of the news shaping the world. More at economist.com or with The Economist app, newsletters, and podcasts.
I'm David Brancaccio. First, it's the first day of a new Congress. Republicans control the House and the Senate, although who will lead the lower chamber is still up in the air ahead of a vote today for House Speaker. Marketplace's Kimberly Adams has more on implications here for economic policy.
Top of the economic agenda for the new Congress, says Adam Michel, Director of Tax Policy Studies at the Cato Institute.
What happens with the Trump tax cuts that were passed in 2017?
Many provisions of that tax law expire at the end of this year, especially the individual tax cuts for most Americans. And interest groups are already clamoring for the elements they want to preserve or change.
Congress will sort of inevitably have to do something, and what they do, how they deal with that deadline, will impact sort of every American's finances.
While unified GOP control of the White House and Congress makes things like confirming cabinet members and judges a bit easier in the Senate,
the House majority is incredibly slim.
Lindsay Owens leads a Groundwork Collaborative, an economic policy think tank. She says for the more complicated issues like taxes, immigration, and energy policy,
we'll see Congress attempt to use reconciliation, which is the tool that they have when they need to pass bills with a simple majority in the House and the Senate, to move through key pieces of their agenda.
But even then, says Owens, Republicans will have to deal with some infighting over what to prioritize and how to pay for it. In Washington, I'm Kimberly Adams for Marketplace.
Multiple published reports this morning say President Biden is set to block the $15 billion takeover of U.S. Steel by Nippon Steel. Nippon means Japan. U.S. Steel's stock is down 8.5% in overnight trading here. The BBC's Mariko Oi says this would be despite concessions by the two companies.
There were reports that President Biden will likely block the deal, and that's despite reports that Nippon Steel has proposed to give the U.S. government a veto power over any potential cuts to U.S. Steel's production capacity, as well as a 10-year guarantee that it would not reduce production capacity in U.S. Steel's mills. That was one of the major concerns of the Union of U.S. Steel, that Nippon will eventually cut steel production in the United States and maybe start importing cheaper steel from Japan, for example, which of course would affect the employees' job security.
The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette is reporting that the Steelworkers Union is scolding some members who sent letters to the White House calling for approval of the merger. The union is suggesting the members were bamboozled by U.S. Steel management into sending the letters, pressure the company denies. Markets, Dow futures are up 0.1%, S&P futures up 0.2%. I see NASDAQ futures up 0.4%. A federal appeals court in Cincinnati has struck down regulations aimed at preventing broadband internet providers from giving souped-up service to favored business partners. To understand this, imagine a private toll road that gave a special fast lane only to drivers of, say, BMWs. Banning these arrangements online is called network neutrality, imposed by the Federal Communications Commission under President Obama. Marketplace's Nova Safo has the latest.
The FCC adopted net neutrality in 2015. The first Trump administration reversed, and the Biden administration reimposed the rules. Now a three-judge panel of the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals has struck it down, relying on the Supreme Court's decision last year to do away with the Chevron doctrine. That was a 40-year legal precedent that had allowed courts in many instances to defer to regulatory agencies when it came to interpreting ambiguous laws. Instead, the appeals panel decided for itself a key question: whether broadband internet was a telecommunications service, that is, whether internet providers were merely supplying, quote, dumb pipes, or whether broadband is actually an information service subject to less FCC oversight. The appeals court, in a technical ruling, said it was an information service. It even relied on dictionary definitions of words such as capability to reach that conclusion. Congress now could act to enshrine net neutrality into law, and the Supreme Court could be asked to weigh in as well, although that is less likely to happen during the Trump administration. I'm Nova Safo for Marketplace.
When you set up an Apple device, it asks if you want it to respond when you call on Siri. That means it's listening for that. Apple has now agreed to settle a case alleging that it recorded audio when Siri was activated and shared what it heard with third parties. Apple says it's done nothing wrong, but if the preliminary settlement is finalized, users could apply for $20 back for each eligible device.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Odoo, designed to save time on business management with one simple user-friendly software, odoo.com. Everything any business will ever need.
In these first days of 2025, our program Marketplace Tech is looking at the year ahead in artificial intelligence. The other day, OpenAI released its newest AI system, and whether we like it or not, artificial intelligence is inveigling its way into our lives. Here's part of my tech colleague Megan McCarty-Carino's conversation with Paresh Dave over at Wired.
Well, the thing I'm going to be watching closely is just what we were talking about, right? These models becoming more powerful. What OpenAI, what Google have talked about is that they want these models to start to connect to services on the internet and provide services on behalf of, or sort of complete tasks on behalf of users, what they would call agentic AI. Not to continue to be a downer here, but I'm not so optimistic that the hype or the hope for how these agents perform this year is going to pan out very well. I've lived through a few of these cycles of different technologies like Google Assistant or even Alexa, where it was supposed to connect to all your other services and make it really easy to do things on your behalf. You know, you were supposed to shop right from Alexa. I don't think there's that much shopping happening through Alexa. At Wired, we've tried out a bunch of travel agent AIs, right, that try to help you plan travel. And, you know, the suggestions just aren't great. I mean, it's not something you can trust 100%, and I don't think we're going to get there this year, but I'm excited to follow those developments.
You can stream the weekly Marketplace Tech Bites videos using YouTube. The handle is Marketplace APM, or they're at our house as well, marketplace.org. Our executive producer is Kelly Silvera. Our digital producer is Dylan Miettinen. Our engineers are Brian Allison and Alex Simpson. I'm David Brancaccio. It's the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.